Would you say that like living in Germany, you enjoy your life more than you did in the US? Or how do the two compare?
Um, yeah, that's something that we talk about a lot because we get a lot of people who assume that we left the US because we didn't like it there, or and you come across that a lot when you meet Americans that are living abroad. They left the country, maybe it was political reasons that they didn't like what was going on, so they left, or uh any number of reasons. But a lot of times it is like a, I left because I hated it or something like that. But we're kind of in this unique spot, I guess, where it's like we had a fine life. I mean, we didn't like our jobs that we were working, but we had a fine life, and um, we didn't really have any reason to leave besides we just wanted to kind of have a little bit of adventure. So when I think back on the States, I don't think I would say that I necessarily feel like I had a better life there or a better life here. I think we just a lot of times see the pros and cons to both places. And in a way, we also joke about how we don't feel like we can ever be happy about anywhere we live now because we know the pros that we're going to miss out on. Like if we were to move back to the States, there's a lot of things that we would really miss about life in Germany. And we would kind of be like, bummed out about it. But then if we stay here, there's things that we miss about the US that we would be pretty bummed about. I mean, of course, the biggest factors is just that we're so far away from family, and all of our friends that we grew up with, um, that we FaceTime like once a week, and that's kind of it. And so no matter how good our lives are in Germany, there's always going to be that factor that's going to be missing. So I guess like if I had to choose which one I felt happier in, I would say right now it'd probably be Germany. I do think that I would say that I've come to really appreciate a lot about just like the social and community aspects of living in Germany. But
Because in some ways you have chosen, right? Because you live in Germany. You could live in
yeah,
the US as well, right?
yeah,
But yeah, but I totally agree with you. Like this idea that there's like some perfect utopian country, it just doesn't. It's not realistic, right? Every country has its pros and its cons, and things that you like about it, and things that you don't. And even the countries where we grow up in, and we should have this connection to. Once you leave, you start to see where they have shortcomings, right? Where you're like, oh,
yeah.
I don't really love this, and this aspect isn't very good and stuff. So, yeah, I think that the you can probably get at some kind of utopian life, but it would have to be like between a few different countries. You'd have to spend a little bit of time in this country
Yeah.
and in that country. And, for example, you might be a Canadian and then for the winter months move somewhere where there's nicer weather, and then you could take advantage of that. And then when it gets blazing hot in that place, you could come back to Canada for the summer. And, you could kind of like, you could
Yeah.
scam the system a little bit to try to find that. But in and of itself, there is no perfect country. There can't be, right?
Well, yeah, no. And I think too, a lot of places that we live, you're kind of living in an echo chamber where a lot of the ideas that you have about where you're living are just kind of everybody just believes the same things. And so I guess like there are things that like I thought about Oklahoma that's like, yeah, you can't beat this because of X, Y, and Z. And then once I get out of it, I'm able to look at it in a different way and go, actually, why did we believe, like, why did I think that that was good or whatever? For like kind of a funny example, I guess, is like Oklahoma is kind of like the bullseye target of Tornado Alley. And so every spring is just, you're constantly on the lookout for tornado storms coming through. And everybody in our homes, typically in your garage, you have a tornado shelter that you go down underground to try to like hide from tornadoes or whatever. And in a way, I kind of accepted that as just, this is just a fact of life. Like this just happens. And now we moved to Germany, and completely honest, in like the 6 years we've lived here, I can count the number of times we've had thunderstorms like on both my hands, and that's it. And I've realized you don't have to live with tornadoes. That doesn't have to be part of your life. Like,
Right.
why
Yeah.
did I just accept that as like, this is just a fact of life?
Yeah.
You got to fear for your life in the springs. Like, and so that's like a silly example, but there's a lot of like more serious examples too of like things that we believe like were just kind of facts of life. And then once you step out of it, you realize that it's not that case. Or the other side of, you live in a place and you hear things about another country and you just accept it as a fact. And then you get there and you realize it's a totally different, uh, and that can be positive or negative. There's things that you think the grass would be greener over there, then you live there and you're like, it's actually not, or the other way around. So,
Sure.
yeah, I think getting out of that kind of bubble and experiencing something different really has helped me appreciate and recognize the negatives of all of these different places, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that the key there is you have to get out in order to see the comparison, right? Because I've heard people here say, Canada is the most beautiful country in the world. And I go, Canada is a very beautiful country, but you've never left. How do you know that it's the most beautiful country in the world? Like,
Yeah.
if you leave Canada and go to some other countries and you come back with the idea that Canada is the most beautiful country, then I agree with you. Great, that's awesome. But until you've left, I have no way of trusting your opinion, right? And so, because I know the kind of, like you said, the little echo chambers that we grow up in. And so that's a very important part. You need to have something to compare it to, or what are we talking about? You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well,
yeah.
100%. And a lot of that too, of course, is also so individualistic. Like, I'm speaking from a very privileged place too, where we didn't have like issues in the US. Like, but there are some people that are very unfortunate. Like, they may have some really horrible medical problem, and the US like can just destroy them financially because of that. And so, yeah, maybe their lives would be significantly better in Germany because of that particular situation or something. So I also, for one person, Germany might be a much better country for them to live in than the US. And for someone else, the US might be a much better country. It just depends on where you're from. And like I said, I think sometimes I can speak from kind of like a privileged standpoint of just like, yeah, we had a good life and we didn't have any issues. We were just doing this for kind of the adventure of it.